What's going on YouTube? Today I bring you finally some different content, and I actually have a cool video coming out tomorrow as well, so stay tuned for that. To give a little hint, Super Bowl 56 halftime show. But for this video today, we are going to be doing a 4-round mock draft, and I've done it a little differently, right? We're not going to be going like pick by pick in normal order wise. We're actually going to be looking at each team's draft classes. So, for example, first up here, we have the Arizona Cardinals with their draft class, and this will go in alphabetical order in terms of cities. And I think the Cardinals get a very nice haul here. They pick up Kenneth Walker III in the first round, who's been tremendous for MSU this season, was a legit Heisman contender for a while there, and just an incredible running back. You know, they're losing both James Conner and their guy that's used to be their backup, really kind of their starter now. Either way, they're losing both their top running backs that I can't remember the name of one for some reason right now. And you're getting a good one here with Kenneth Walker. Andrew Booth Jr. is definitely a guy that I'm lower on than most people. He's a first rounder to a lot of guys. I have him as a second rounder. He almost drops to the third in this one, but the Cardinals do snatch him up with their second round pick. I think he is a very traits-ridden guy, and if he's someone that they can, you know, they have the time, obviously, you know, they're the best team in the NFL right now. They have the time to let this guy develop, and I think if you do give a guy like Booth the time to develop, he could turn into an all-pro corner. As of right now, I think he's just that kind of a developmental trait-based guy that I would take more in the second, early third, and that's where the Cardinals take him. In the third round, picking up Greg Dulcich out of UCLA. You know, Cardinals are not a team that values tight end all that much. And then they traded for Zach Ertz, and he's actually been pretty good for them. Zach Ertz is on a contract year, as is their backup tight end, Max Williams. So they're going to need a tight end. Yeah, sure, they could resign one of them, but I prefer just getting one in the draft, especially when it is a pretty decent class. And they picked themselves up here a pretty good tight end with Greg Dulcich, who really can do a lot after the catch. And all around, just a very good tight end for the Cardinals to pick up. So I think they get a solid draft class here. Then we have the Atlanta Falcons, who early on picked 2 Georgia defenders with Nakobe Dean and Darion Kendrick. Nakobe Dean, still my first linebacker off the board. I mean, Devin Lloyd was fantastic last night against Oregon. I guess that tells you when I'm recording this, but he was fantastic. Yeah, Devin Lloyd is going to be a fantastic linebacker in the NFL. I just don't think he's as good as Nakobe Dean, which really does say something. Nakobe Dean is quite an incredible talent, and linebackers certainly not the Falcons' biggest needs. I mean, I think really their biggest needs is kind of everything else I take here. Darion Kendrick, a really good corner that I think has been overshadowed by a few guys on that defense, but still a very good corner, just got to avoid off-the-field issues. Isaiah Foskey has been great for Notre Dame this year. He's a great edge rusher. They really need some receiving help besides Calvin Ridley and Kyle Pitts, especially if, you know, Pitts is going to be so streaky, and if Ridley's going to have a few issues every now and then. Romeo Dubes has been great for Nevada this year. I think he fits great in this Atlanta offense. And Brandon Joseph, really someone who's fallen off. I mean, he was a first rounder to a lot of people, including me, after how he played last year. But I really think he's taken a big step down. Certainly still that upside there. Does still have some of that deep field hawk ability, but when he gained weight this offseason, it really took away from that. And my whole point with the rest of that is that I think the Falcons were able to get a lot of other positions of need later in the draft with some great players. Nakobe Dean, on the other hand, I think was just a great pick to get a great player in the first round that I think fits this Atlanta defense really well. I think Foyesade Olakun is on a contract year. Even if he isn't, you now have one of the best linebacking core in the NFL with Deion Jones, Nakobe Dean, and Foyesade. So I think a really good draft class here for the Falcons. And of course, I think every one of these draft classes is going to be good, but I think the Falcons get a pretty good one. Then the Ravens actually have 2 pages because they have 9 picks in the first 4 rounds. for a team that's pretty good, that's pretty awesome to have. And with their first pick in the first round, I have them taking Nicholas Petit-Frere out of Ohio State, who's been pretty good this year. Got a little streaky towards the middle of the season, but other than that, he's been really good. The the Ravens are going to need a tackle because Villanueva, he's been fine, but he is on a contract year. And Petit-Frere is really a guy you could throw into guard if you wanted to. Either way, I'm drafting him to be a tackle here, and he should be pretty good for Ohio State. Going from Ohio State to Baltimore. Lewis Cine in the second round, pretty solid Georgia defender. Maybe a guy, again, I'm a little bit lower on than most people at picking him in the late second round. He is a third rounder to me. I think the Ravens reach a bit, though, just because safety is still a bit of a need, especially if you take a look at the rest of the roster. It's definitely a need. It's not the worst position in the world for them. They do have a couple solid guys there and a few young guys that could develop into something, but I think Lewis Cine is someone who could come in and make a bit more of an impact immediately. Never going to be like an like an all-star safety or anything, but he can make an impact. Sam Williams out of Ole Miss is a very, very good pass rusher that, similar to Lewis Cine, and you'll notice that's going to be a theme with a lot of these drafts, is that for some of these better teams, I really prefer teams either taking those big swings for developmental guys, hence Andrew Booth to the Cardinals, or going with these more complete, low-ceiling guys but high floors, such as Lewis Cine and Sam Williams. And Sam Williams, just like I said, very good pass rusher that just knows what he's doing. He's never going to be that elite pass rusher, most likely, because I think they got a guy like that already in Adafio Way. But with Sam Williams, he can bring a lot to the table. Chris Ottman-Bell does bring a bit like that Sammy Watkins-like receiving ability, but I think Ottman-Bell could be even better, and might even be even better just stepping in immediately. Ravens, yeah, I mean, I still think you can upgrade the passing unit. Mark Andrews has been fantastic. Hollywood's been pretty good, but they could still definitely upgrade there. Alec Lindstrom from Boston College, another guy that I'm not as high on as most people, but I mean, dropping to round 4 is, yes, definitely a fall for a pretty good center. I mean, I don't think he's going to be a bad player or anything. I just don't think he holds the same value to go as high as some of these other players. But either way, it's a great pick for the Ravens here, who get themselves probably a solid center, and they don't really have a center. So getting some offensive line help early on. And then on the second page, first pick on the second page, they have 5 fourth-round picks. Deslin Alexander out of Pittsburgh, I think is a solid pickup. If you want to just let him develop, I think that'd be fine. I think he's a guy who can step in and make some sort of impact right away, but also does have a decently high ceiling. So that is a great pickup. Running back Chris Rodriguez Jr., really great running back. I really would love for him to be higher for me. It's just that the fumbles are an issue, and you can be a great running back, but fumbling the ball is just not something that you want to take with the risk of. And so I think with the Ravens here, you've got some solid running backs already. Obviously, they have J.K. Dobbins. You're not drafting Rodriguez to be a starter here, but I do think he can be a really good backup for these Ravens. Henry To'oTo'o out of Alabama. Similar case to Rodriguez, really good talent, very athletic. It's just he cannot tackle. I think he has like a 14% missed tackle rate, which is not very good. It's something that's coachable, though. That's the thing, is with the Ravens, you're losing, I think you're losing Malik Fort, LJ Fort and Malik Harrison this offseason. Either way, you're losing at least LJ Fort. I know that. And so why not get a linebacker in here that could maybe pair up with Patrick Queen for the future? Like I said, he's got a lot of stuff going for him, a highly developmental player that could turn into an all-pro linebacker someday. He's just got to fix that tackling. And I think the Ravens are a team that can afford that risk, but also take the time to develop it. And then their last pick of the 4th round, we have cornerback Storm Duck out of UNC, who he's been fine this year. He's not really popped off the board in any specific trait. I think he holds a few nice traits to him that could add to some depth to the Ravens corner room. They're losing Jimmy Smith and I think Anthony Averett's on a contract year. I think they'll re-sign one of them. Either way, they're going to need some depth, though, so I do have them taking Storm Duck. Then we have the Buffalo Bills, and the Bills really get a steal here at pick 22 with Ahmad Gardner. Sauce has been shut down for Cincinnati his entire career, and dropping all the way to 22, like I said, that is a complete steal for the Bills. You get a shutdown corner to pair with another shutdown corner, and the Bills have one of the scariest corner duos in the NFL. Add on to that Haskell Garrett, and this is another one of those picks where I don't think he has the highest ceiling in the world, but is someone that can step up and can step in and will contribute to your team. Haskell Garrett is a guy that gets the job done. He's not the flashiest player, doesn't have the best stats, but he gets the job done. In the third round, picking up Cody Ince out of Iowa, who he's not played a ton this year. But I think when he has played, he has showed some really nice things. He's one of those guys where I think I'm betting on him a bit more to really develop once he gets to the NFL. A similar case with Spencer Brown, who I was a big fan of, where he had played more than Cody Ince, sure, but I think he was much more of a developmental guy. Bills took him, and I would love to see Cody Ince here. They need some guard help, especially for the future, so I like the pickup. And then in the fourth round, picking up Noah Taylor out of Virginia. The linebacker's not the biggest need, but then again, the Bills really don't have a lot of needs right now. And Noah Taylor, I think, can just bring some solid depth and some solid traits to a linebacker room that, I mean, it's not like the best in the NFL, but it's not bad either. Then we have the Panthers, who only have 2 picks in the first 4 rounds, and one of them is actually from the Texans. With their first pick, I have them taking quarterback Matt Corral. It really came down to me of, do I go offensive line or do I go quarterback? I decided to go quarterback, and I really just went with the best one available. I think Carolina could fit a lot of different guys. I do like Matt Corral. I think he's a guy that would fit this scheme pretty nicely. Certainly a guy that, with the type of offensive line that the Panthers do have, he's able to make plays, has decent athleticism to escape the pocket, but also can make those nice throws to guys like DJ Moore, Robbie Anderson. So I think he fits nicely here. And then with their 4th round pick, taking Jamari Sawyer, a really solid player that again, I don't think he has the highest ceiling in the world. He's not ever going to be like a Pro Bowl lineman to me, but he can certainly be a starter for a Panthers team that desperately needs some help on the offensive line. Add on the fact that he is a very versatile guy. I believe he's played every position on the line except for center. I think it's a good pickup for the Panthers, especially in the 4th round. Then we have the Bears, who do not have a first-round pick, and they need some offensive help pretty badly for Justin Fields, especially offensive line. So that's why I have them taking another similar lineman to Jamari Sawyer in Zion Johnson, except I think Zion Johnson is much better. I love his he just brings such nice power, yet such fluidness to his game, and I really enjoy watching him block. I think he's also a very versatile guy, played tackle, played guard, can play either for Chicago. Pairing him up with Tevin Jenkins for the future would make a great duo on that offensive line for years to come. And then in 3rd round, picking up one of my guys, Dejon Dixon out of Nichols Colonels, is a very good receiver. Trust me, this guy has the potential to be DK Metcalf-like. Certainly not saying he's going to be DK Metcalf. But he is a very nice, big-bodied receiver from a smaller school, so he really has not gotten that much attention. But I swear, you go look at the tape, you're going to be pretty impressed with what you see. This is certainly one of my guys. I would love to see him on the Bears, paired up with Darnell Mooney, and make a nice duo for the future. So all about getting that offensive help for Justin Fields. Then with the Cincinnati Bengals, I have them taking a corner in Roger McCreary, who's been pretty darn good for Auburn this year. A guy that really, a lot of the time, you'd probably see as your first corner off the board. He is my 4. And that really shows how good this corner class is. Roger McCreary, a great pickup for the Bengals. They don't have the worst corner room in the NFL, but it could certainly use some upgrading. I think Roger McCreary could fit and would be a massive upgrade. Offensive line has not been horrendous. Like, it hasn't been Dolphins, Panthers bad this year. Still does need some upgrading. And so with the next 2 picks, I do have them taking Abraham Lucas out of Washington State and Alex Forsyth out of Oregon. They could really use a center and they could really use a right tackle. These two fill those roles perfectly. Abraham Lucas has been amazing this year. Does fall a little bit. I think he should go higher than this. And honestly, I think, with a proper a really good offseason and maybe a really good Senior Bowl, he could move up into that first-round conversation. For right now, I have the Bengals taking him in the 2nd round, and Alex Forsyth, a very good center out of Oregon who really helps upgrade this offensive line for Joe Burrow to keep him protected. And then with 2 4th-round picks, I have them taking Colby Wooden out of Auburn as well, Roger McCreary's teammate, who is a pretty solid guy, much more of a developmental type player to me. He is a smaller type guy, but does have a pretty decently high ceiling. And then taking John Mechie III out of Alabama, who I've pretty massively dropped on him. I feel like he just doesn't translate to an elite wide receiver. I still think he could be a solid guy. I think probably going to be a solid depth piece to the Bengals, especially when you consider that they do have a very good receiving room. Main reason I took a receiver here is because they do have a lot of free agent wide receivers. So John Mechie, certainly a guy with a nice ceiling, but I just don't think he hits it. So he does fall for me. Still a pretty solid receiver. Then we have the Cleveland Browns, who another team that really they just don't have a lot of needs. I mean, in fact, you see a punter down there, and I'll get to Matt Ariza later. But with the first round pick taking Jordan Davis, just such a big boy. He is a grown man out of Georgia. The dude's great. I mean, he's got insane power and really nice athleticism for that power. So Jordan Davis, a great pickup for a team that really doesn't have like that true elite nose tackle. Jordan Davis certainly has that potential. In the second round, picking up Khalil Shakir out of Boise State. They're going to need somebody to pair up with Donovan Peoples-Jones for the future. I think Shakir could be the yin to Peoples-Jones' yang. Khalil Shakir is that guy that can just go up and it's like he can catch anything. I mean, I thought of CeeDee Lamb a little bit when I was watching him play, and I've really fallen in love with this guy. Another one of my guys, although a lot of people are rising on him as well. In the third round, taking Nolan Smith. So pairing the Georgia guys up here together, I think Nolan Smith is someone that I'm certainly higher on because I see a lot of good potential with Nolan Smith. Maybe not a guy that's going to step in immediately and be great or anything, but 2-3 years down the road could turn into a very good pass rusher for the Browns. And I also, again, pairing him up with his teammate. In the fourth round, picking up Tariq Woolen out of UTSA. Dude not only has been really good this year, but he is a freak of nature. He's like 6'4", like 230 pounds or something like that. It might be even more. And the fact that he's that big and still moves the way he does, it's pretty scary. Tariq Woolen is a really good pickup in the fourth round. And for a team that doesn't have like that, like they've got good corners, right? I mean, Greg Newsome's been great this year. Denzel Ward's one of the best corners in the NFL right now. Tariq Woolen can bring that freak of nature to that defense. And then with their other fourth round pick, picking up Matt Ariza out of San Diego State. And yeah, it's a punter. But this guy's good. I mean, this guy has a legitimate chance, in my opinion, to be maybe the best punter of all time. Like, I'm talking Ray Guy levels. He's broken pretty much all college football records for, longest punt, longest consecutive punts, longest averages, all that. I mean, the dude, he pins you back. Like, it doesn't matter if you get San Diego at the 1 yard line. He will punt that thing to the team's other 20 pretty much every single time. And for a team like the Browns, you don't have the best punter in the world. You really just don't have that many needs. Why not hop on it here and get a really good punter in Matt Ariza? And then with the Dallas Cowboys, first round I have them taking Jordan Battle, who's been pretty good for Alabama this year. Now, he's a guy that I'm not super sure that he'll ever be like that elite safety, but I think for a team that also just doesn't have a lot of needs, you do have a lot of free agent safeties this year, and Jordan Battle does still have some nice upside, even if I don't think he'll ever be like elite, is still a good pickup here. Second round, Jermaine Johnson out of FSU. The dude looks like a boulder, and he plays like one too. He's really hard to stop. And while edge is not the biggest need for the Cowboys, I think getting a guy like Johnson who can play alongside Parsons, Lawrence, Osa, I think could be good for that defense to make a really scary pass rush. Third round, picking up Darian Kennard, a guy that I'm not very high on, especially considering how a lot of people give him a lot of first round hype. I'm certainly not high on him. Now, very versatile guy. Yes, he's a very strong guy. Yes, I think he survives more as a guard in the NFL. A team's certainly going to draft him as a tackle, so I could see the Cowboys going for more of a developmental route here on the tackle, at probably left tackle, just being Tyron Smith's starting to get a little old, but who knows? Tackles last a while, but he's been injured a bit recently. I think he lasts at guard in the NFL. Like I said, very strong guy. And honestly, I think if he was more projected to be strictly a guard, I'd probably be a bit higher on him. Just being that, he's more projected as a tackle, I'm just a bit lower on him. And then in the fourth round, taking Leonard Johnson out of Duke, who's been pretty good for the Devils this year. Nothing spectacular. I think he's a solid depth piece with that potential to maybe, 3 or 4 years down the road, I could see him stepping up like into that starter role if needed. Never going to be like, a great starter or anything, but I think a solid depth pickup for the Cowboys. Then we have the Broncos, who have 6 picks in this year's draft, 2 thanks to the Rams. Starting off in the first round, I have them getting Bernhard Raymond out of Central Michigan, who has been just incredible this year. This guy is definition of power. Seeing him drive back opponents is really, really fun. And I think he's someone that the Broncos could desperately use on the right side. Someone super powerful that's still able to keep up with those speed rushers. I think he's a great pickup for Denver in the first. Second round, picking up Arnold Ebiketie out of Penn State, who's really someone that's emerged a bit more recently, but truly does possess a lot of great traits to be a pretty good pass rusher in the NFL one day. Not ever going to be like, he's not going to be Von Miller, right? But for a team that, they could use at least some depth with Von Miller gone now on that edge. Just need, especially if Ebiketie just a trait-based role player, he's a really good trait-based role player. And then in this other second pick, with their other second round pick, they get JoJo Domann out of Nebraska. I think he's a solid pickup for them. Kind of similar to Josie Jewell, except much better in pass coverage. So then you have a nice duo for the future there with Domann really being that more pass coverage guy, Jewell being a much better run defender. So I think that's a solid pickup for them there. Third round, picking up Martin Emerson Jr. out of Mississippi State. Very, very good corner. Does fall in this draft as corners are just they're picked really early on, and then in my draft they kind of slow down in like the second round. So he does definitely fall, but it is a great pickup for Denver, who even after loading up at corner this offseason, I mean, Bryce Callahan's a free agent, Kyle Fuller's a free agent, Ronald Darby seems to be struggling to stay healthy again. If need be, I think this is a guy that can certainly develop into a starter someday, and even then he's great depth to have for this Broncos defense. The other third round pick, taking Sam Hartman out of Wake Forest, who has been really good this year. I think mainly this is one of those picks where I think people underrate Teddy Bridgewater a bit. I don't agree that he's a bottom 7 quarterback. I think Teddy has been pretty good this year. Yeah, he's certainly not been amazing or anything, but especially if Denver's able to make the playoffs with him, I don't think there's unless you can trade for a Deshaun Watson, Aaron Rodgers. And even then, maybe you still want to draft a quarterback to be their backup. A developmental guy like Sam Hartman, who has a lot of great traits, does need some development. I mean, I think it makes sense. So I like to pick either way. Plus, Wake Forest, Denver does like their Wake Forest guys. And then their fourth round pick, picking up Matthew Butler out of Tennessee. Another really traits-based guy, but this guy does have a pretty insane ceiling. Also has a pretty low floor. So that's mainly why he falls here. Is he's just a really unsafe prospect, but with proper development and proper time, he could turn into like a Pro Bowl defensive tackle. I think he's the type of build that Denver needs at that interior position. So I really like the pickup for the Broncos. And then moving on to the Lions, we have probably the big point of this draft, one of the bigger points. With the Lions having the number 1 pick, they take Aidan Hutchinson. And it's not a wild idea, as many people are, letting it become a more popular opinion. Me personally, it feels probably more right for Kayvon Thibodeau to go number 1, but Aidan Hutchinson has just been out of his mind this year. He's a player that is at the very least going to be a good run defender, sort of similar to a Jadeveon Clowney, even though I think Kayvon Thibodeau fits more of a Jadeveon Clowney build. He's just a bit of a sure thing. He's been amazing this year, and so I think he's earned himself the number 1 pick to Detroit. So, I mean, how much are you really earning yourself there? With their second first-round pick, taking Jameson Williams, who he's looked pretty freaking great. He's probably going to move up my boards even more after his performance against Georgia, because he's just looked amazing. So he's been really good. And then in the second round, Sam Howell actually falls out of the first round. And so I have the Lions picking him up with the first pick of the second round. I don't think quarterbacks, I think they could take a quarterback round 1, but you really think about it. Jared Goff is there for the next 3 years on a big contract. With someone like Sam Howell, he's a guy that can certainly step into those games where Jared Goff is struggling and maybe give you something, and is probably their quarterback of the future. And I think he's worth hopping on here after slipping out of the first round. In the third round, taking Yusuf Corker out of Kentucky, who has been also pretty good this season. Kind of chilled a little bit recently, but he was really hot at the start of the season. Very good physical player. And then in the other third round pick, getting Josh DeBerry out of Boston College. Maybe a bit of a reach, as right now he wouldn't be the best player in the world, but a lot of great traits, and definitely has a huge amount of upside. So I think the Lions get a pretty solid draft here. Then the Packers, and they kind of have to reach a little bit for a wide receiver, in my opinion. Jahan Dotson is great, don't get me wrong. I don't think he's a first round receiver, but the Packers end up taking him here, with a bit of a reach, just because they have such a big need for wide receiver. I mean, Devontae Adams is likely gone, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, Alan Lazard also on contract years. So you get a really nice speed threat here with Jahan Dotson. It could be like an upgraded version of KJ Hamler, which would be pretty good for Jordan Love to have going forward. In the second round, picking up Justin Jacobs. They're probably not resigning Devondre Campbell. They just don't have the money to, and so they're going to need at least someone new at linebacker. And Justin Jacobs has been pretty good this year. I think he could be a serviceable backup or a number two, probably a number two. In the third round, picking up Nick Zakelj out of Fordham, who he's a guy that not a lot of people have heard of, but he's going to fly under the radar for a bit. His name is going to start to rise come draft day. He is a very solid tackle with a great amount of upside, but also a solid enough experience where he could start day one, and the Packers could really use him at right tackle or left tackle if Bakhtiari does go down again. In the fourth round, picking up Isaac Taylor-Stewart out of USC, who I've definitely cooled on a bit, but I think would still be a very good pick in the fourth round. That's some good value for a team that also needs corner help. And then their other fourth round pick, getting Jalen Weidermeyer out of Texas A&M, another guy that I've definitely cooled on. I just don't think he holds that same upside as some of the other guys. He is a solid after the catch receiver, but not much else to me. He's not as great a blocker as I think I'd like him to be. So I have him as a fourth rounder, but I think he is a solid pickup for the Packers, who at the very least are going to need a backup, if not a starter, because Robert Tonyan is also on a contract year. Moving on to the Texans, they have the second pick in the draft, and they still get Kayvon Thibodeaux, which is a great pickup. That's going to be a great duo to pair with Jonathan Greenard for years to come. So that's awesome, obviously. Basically Jadeveon Clowney over again. Hopefully this time he's a bit better, though. In the second round, picking up Kyler Gordon, who just barely slips out of the first round, but Kyler Gordon is a pretty good cornerback. Ian Cummings has just drooled over this guy ever since he checked him out, and I love him. He's really good, arguably better than the number one there, Trent McDuffie. Now, you do have to worry about that. He did face not as much, actually. Being the number two corner, he didn't face as many number two wide receivers as most number two corners, but he still did obviously see those number two receivers more often than the number one would. Either way, though, Kyler Gordon, he is a pretty good cornerback and would be a great pickup here for the Texans. Third round, getting Calvin Austin III out of Memphis. This is a dude who, size might be a bit of an issue. Not everybody is Devontae Smith. Devontae Smith is one of those elite receivers where, regardless of the size, he will make plays for you. And Calvin Austin, he gives me very similar vibes. Third round, obviously, just not quite as good as Devontae Smith. Has that type of potential, but I think he'd be a solid pickup for the Texans here. In the third round, again, getting Perion Winfrey out of Oklahoma. Really good nose tackle for the Texans here, getting someone to body up next to Greenard and Kayvon Thibodeaux and make a really solid defensive line there and get some good pass rush. And then with their fourth round pick from the Rams, getting Jaylen Warren out of OSU. Excuse me, out of OSU. Jaylen Warren has been pretty darn good this year. He is just such a great power runner. That also brings some really nice speed to the table as well. Texans have a lot of running backs becoming free agents. They could use a guy like this for the future. And I think fourth round is really good value for a guy like Jaylen Warren. Then we move on to the Colts, who do not have a first-round pick. In fact, when Carson Wentz plays this Sunday, they're not going to be getting a second pick. They will be getting a first-round pick guaranteed from the Eagles. Sending their first-round pick guaranteed to the Eagles. And so, they get a second-round, or they have a second-round pick here. And with Trevor Penning, he's a guy that could certainly be much higher than pick 48. I mean, this guy legitimately could be the second tackle off the board, depending on how this offseason goes for him. He's a really good tackle. I think he lasts better as a long-term prospect in a draft and expect results immediately. You're slotting him into left tackle, obviously, to replace Eric Fisher after Anthony Costanzo retired a couple years ago now. So with Trevor Penning, Yeah, I mean, he's a bit more of a developmental guy, but when you let him develop, he will turn into a really good tackle. And then maybe a pick that a lot of people are going to dislike, probably Colts fans, is Bailey Zappi, who showed out against UTSA yesterday. Which, by the way, yeah, there's a day in between recording. UTSA, he almost led them to a comeback. It was pretty impressive. He's been amazing all season. But then, especially this last game where it looked like they were going to lose pretty horribly, and I mean, they only lost by one score. Zappi was pretty good, and honestly, he could have been even better because there was a lot of drop passes in that game. So Bailey Zappi is a very good quarterback. With some development, could turn into a top-tier quarterback someday. And that's mainly why I drafted him to the Colts here, because when you look at this team, there's not a ton of needs. I mean, this team is filled out in a lot of different places. They're very talented. They've got great coaching. I'm not a fan of Carson Wentz. I don't think he's been as good as people think this year. Carson Wentz is not ever going to win you a Super Bowl. Bailey Zappi has that potential to become a quarterback that can win you that Super Bowl, and so that's why I have them taking him in the third round here. And in the fourth round, getting his teammate out of Western Kentucky, Jareth Stearns, who also really showed out yesterday against UTSA, but all in all, he's been having a great season. They could still use some receiving help, so I think pairing him up with his quarterback for the future is a good pick here by the Colts. Then moving on to the Jaguars, third pick, they're getting Evan Neal. They're going to need some tackle help. Cam Robinson probably gone after this year. Their other tackle, which I cannot remember the name of for right now, it's Jawan something, I believe. Not good. And so they could definitely use some offensive line help in general. Their interior is definitely better, but it is getting older. And Evan Neal's a guy that really can play anywhere you want him to. Obviously, you're drafting him to play tackle at pick 3, and certainly can. He's been amazing all season, so that would be a great pickup for the Jaguars, who need to get some protection for Trevor Lawrence. In the second round, picking up Kingsley Enagbare out of South Carolina, who's also been really good this season. Another guy that, if he falls out of the first round, good players just fall in the draft. It happens every year. And he falls out of the first round, and the Jaguars snag him up there in the second. So that's a great pickup for them. Pairing him with Josh Allen is a scary duo for the future. In the third round, getting Isaiah Likely out of Coastal Carolina. They got pretty desperate. They're in the beginning of the year for a tight end, trading for Dan Arnold. And it just hasn't worked out. Isaiah Likely is my top tight end of the class. I don't have any tight ends in the first 2 rounds, but there are a couple guys in this class that could be pretty good. No one's special enough to be, first, early second. Again, first tight ends taken in the third round, but it is a good pickup by the Jaguars. And their other third round pick from Panthers, taking Travius Hodges Tomlinson out of TCU. Got some great athleticism. And that's really where his main selling point is that he is a fantastic athlete. As a corner, I think he has a few things to work on, but one of those guys that could develop into a really nice player. And then in the fourth round, picking up Anais Smith out of Texas A&M, who's been really good. I think a guy that probably should be drafted a bit higher than where he will be. It's just there's a lot of good receivers in this class. And he falls to the fourth round, but even for a fourth-round receiver, he'll probably turn into a pretty solid player in the NFL and hopefully be able to create some separation so Trevor Lawrence actually has someone to throw to for once. Then the Chiefs taking Zion Tupiola. I'm still learning to say this. Zion Tupuola-Fetui out of Washington, who not had the biggest sample size this year because he was hurt to start off the year, but the fact that in the limited sample size that he has been back this year, he's been really good. This is a guy that I feel like people should be talking about a lot more than they are. The Chiefs should love if they get a guy like this. Honestly, a guy that maybe not a lot of people will be expecting to go in the first round, but I think he will. He's a really good edge rusher, great right now, and he has a pretty high floor as well and a pretty high ceiling. So Zion is a great pickup here. Charles Cross in the second round is a guy that very well could go in the first round, but like I said, good players fall. Charles Cross, he's been pretty good this year, and I think getting him to spot up at that right tackle, left tackle, if they don't keep Brown, then would be great for them. And it's a really young offensive line, but this team has been good at drafting offensive linemen. I mean, heck, Creed Humphrey and Trace Smith have been nearly all pro talents this year, so it really doesn't hurt if they're good out the gate. It doesn't matter if they're a rookie. So Charles Cross, I think, would be a great pickup here. at a team that needs some tackle help. In the third round, picking up Jay Shaw out of UCLA. Now, Rashad Fenton's been really good this year, and I do think L'Jarius Sneed is still a serviceable starter. But Jay Shaw is someone who, if you give him a couple years, I think he can turn into a solid starter in the NFL. So I think it's worth picking him up. And then the fourth round, picking up Jaden Reed out of MSU. They need some receiver help because they got a lot of guys on contract years right now, and Jaden Reed brings some nice speed, but also route running to the table for the Chiefs. Which I think is what they could use. Is not just speed anymore because teams are really starting to figure out how to just stop that speed aspect. You need guys like Jaden Reed who bring decent speed, but also other stuff to the table. Then we have the Las Vegas Raiders, and they're another team that desperately needs some receiver help, except they don't have a Tyreek Hill. They have Zay Jones and Hunter Renfrow. So I have them taking David Bell out of Purdue here, who has had a pretty good year. He's not quite on the same level as some of those better receivers of the class, the Chris Olaves, the Garrett Wilsons, Jameson Williams. And I do have him being taken over Jameson Williams here just because, I don't know, I didn't like the idea of the Raiders drafting another Alabama receiver for some reason. But with David Bell here, very good receiver. He actually has a bit underrated speed, but very good route running, great hands. He's just all around a solid guy. Honestly, has that Michael Thomas esque ability to him. So I think he'd be a really good pick here for the Raiders. Leo Chenal out of Wisconsin has really taken that number one role from Jack Sanborn, who's still been great this season. But Leo Chenal has just been great. And so I have them taking him in the second round here. Their linebacker unit, pretty old. They could use someone alongside Denzel Perryman because Corey Littleton's just old. Nick Kwiatkowski's just kind of been declining a bit. Third round, taking Dom Peterson out of Nevada, a bit of an undersized guy, but he does have some really nice technique to his game, and so I think he can be a bit more of that. They have a lot of big-bodied guys in that interior room, so getting someone with a bit more technique, a bit more, fluidity to his game, I think would be important here. And then in the fourth round, getting quite a steal with Lecitus Smith out of Virginia Tech. This is a guy that's probably going to be drafted lower than where he should go because another one of those guys where, maybe a little raw coming out, but give him 3-4 years and he could turn into a pretty good starter in the NFL. By then, Richie Incognito is going to be retired most likely. Alex Leatherwood, we don't know if he's going to work out really because he's not looked good so far. They still need center help, so Lecitus Smith, I think, makes a lot of sense here for the Raiders, who get a pretty decent class in my opinion. Then the Chargers, first round picking up Devin Lloyd. I think this last week against the Broncos really showed that their linebacking unit is probably the worst unit on that team because they just cannot stop the run to save their lives, and they just give up way too easily. They need to get someone in there that is a playmaker. And you want to talk about a playmaker, Devin Lloyd is a playmaker down to the P. That is what he does, and he does it well. And so I think getting a guy like that here on the Chargers would be a great pickup. He went off against Oregon. In the second round, picking up George Karlaftis out of Purdue, who, another guy that I'm a bit lower on, but certainly has a really nice floor. I think he has a Ryan Kerrigan-type projection to his career, except maybe not quite as good. Either way, I mean, he's a solid run defender, and the Chargers do need some run defense, so picking up two defensive guys here that can really help in that area. Then in the third round, picking up Jalen Tolbert. Besides Mike Williams and Keenan Allen, they don't have a whole lot going in the receiving room, and Mike Williams is on a contract year. Jalen Tolbert has showed out this year, and so I think he'd be a great pickup. And then in the fourth round, picking up Mikael Wright, a guy that I've dropped a little bit on. I don't know if he'll ever be like a starter in the NFL, but they needed to get a corner at some point here in the draft. That was the best guy on the board for me, so I had them taking Mikael Wright. Then the Rams, with only 2 picks in the first 4 rounds this year, and I think they only have like 3 picks in the entire draft. In the third round, picking up Olakunle Fatukasi out of Rutgers, who I'm a big fan of. His brother is a great run defender in the NFL, and Olakunle is also a solid run defender, but also just brings some nice athleticism. He's a linebacker that would probably go in day one as their best linebacker, and hopefully this would be a better pick than the guys they took last year. And then with their fourth round pick, taking up Noah Daniels. They need some corner depth, period, but Darius Williams also being on a contract year does not help. So Noah Daniels, a guy with some extreme upside and really nice traits as well, I think is a solid pickup for the Rams here. Next, we move to the Miami Dolphins, who they get some offensive line help here early. With their first-round pick from the Niners, they take Tyler Linderbaum, who falls a little bit, honestly. It's kind of weird to say that a center at 21 is falling, but Tyler Linderbaum's just that good. I mean, he has the talent of a top 10 pick, just because I think center, one of the more decreased value positions, obviously doesn't go until pick 21 here, but that really helps the Dolphins team whose offense has just been putrid. It's been god awful. They're easily, like, by far and away the worst in run blocking and pass blocking. Tyler Linderbaum instantly helps that out so much, and then getting Sean Ryan in the second round also helps that out because he's a guy that can really play anywhere for you on the line. He's a really good tackle, a Pro Bowl level guard for me, and so I think he's a really solid pickup for the Dolphins in the second round. Third round, also from the Niners, they pick up Breece Hall out of Iowa State, a dude who he's a great running back, great power to his game. He just suffers with such a horrible line there at Iowa State. And after picking up Sean Ryan and Tyler Linderbaum, you know your offensive line. It's going to be better. Tua's going to be able to have more time to throw, and that's going to lead to the run game be a bit easier, and Breece Hall is going to help make that running game existent. Their first fourth round pick, they pick up Damone Clark out of LSU, who really established himself as that linebacker one over guys like Mike Jones and such. And he's been pretty good this year. Maybe a guy that'll fall a bit just because he's a little undersized for being like mainly a pass coverage guy. But I think he's a nice fit on this Dolphins defense. And then in the fourth round, picking up Jack Jones out of ASU. He's a guy that I think it fits really well with the Dolphins here, where he has issues sometimes with coverage is the main thing, and obviously for a corner that's not what you want to see. But the dude has some fantastic traits, and he's a guy where I think if he just gets kicked in the butt the right way in the NFL, he can turn into a pretty good corner. And I think Brian Flores is one of those coaches where he can really do that to you. He came out of the Bill Belichick system, so it's kind of just what they got, and I think so. It's a good fit there. They could use some corner help for the future. Got a lot of guys on contract years, so I have them taking Jack Jones out of ASU. Then next we have the Minnesota Vikings, who it's the same pick actually that's been for a while now, but I have them taking Kaiir Elam out of Florida. I don't know why. I just really like the idea of Elam on the Vikings. They need corner help pretty badly. I think Elam fits. He's really solid in zone and man coverage, a type of guy that is 9 times out of 10 your cornerback one in the class, and a lot of people do have him as their cornerback ones, but Derek Stingley is just that good. But Kaiir Elam here at 12 is a good pickup. And then getting an edge rusher to hopefully pair with Danielle Hunter, hopefully he's still there. But Nick Bonito has been pretty freaking good for Oklahoma this year. Another case where it's just I feel like there's a few other guys that are just going to go above him. Great players fall in the draft, but Nick Bonito is a great pickup, a great fit, and a great pairing with Danielle Hunter. And then in the third round, getting the Anthony Harris replacement with Javon Hicks, who should make a great duo with Harrison Smith until he's still been pretty good this year. I don't think he's been quite as good as years past, but he's still been like a Pro Bowl level safety to me. So Javon Hicks would be a great pickup as well. And I think the Vikings get some good help here on defense, which is what they really need. And hopefully without Mike Zimmer as their coach. The New England Patriots in the first round taking a receiver, as that's really one of the only holes that they have. And even then, it's not the biggest hole in the world. For a team like the Patriots that are rolling so much, you're not expecting them to have a lot of holes, and they just don't. This is mainly depth and guys that they have on contract year. They have a few receivers on contract years, and no one elite, of course, comes to mind on that receiving unit. You got Slater. Kendrick Bourne's been pretty good this year, but there's just not a lot there. Treylon Burks brings some nice ability. Definitely a guy that can go downfield, but also a great, in the slot. So I think that's a really good pickup there for them. Jaquan Brisker in the second round, also a good pickup. Really good box safety, which is kind of something they just don't have. Kyle Duggar can be that, but I think pairing Kyle Duggar and Jaquan Brisker together would be a good matching. Christian Harris in the third round. Definitely someone I'm starting to cool on a lot. It just doesn't seem like he's able to play pass coverage. Only reason I have him being taken to the Patriots here in the third round is mainly because I think Bill Belichick understands that, right? And Christian Harris has still been pretty good for Alabama. I think Bill Belichick will understand how to use him if Nick Saban does. And so I think it's a good fit, and Bill Belichick will know how to use him in some good way. And then Drake Jackson of the fourth round. This is probably the biggest player that I'm low on that people are high on is Drake Jackson. He's a fourth round pick to me, and a lot of people have him as a first round pick. I don't quite get why. Um, I see some of that potential, but to be honest, I don't think he's a good player entering the NFL. I don't think he really ever is a good player in his career. I just really don't. I think Bill Belichick, for him, it'd at least be a good, worthwhile pick, to see what you have. And he is a guy that you can turn into a serviceable rotation piece. But I just don't see the first round hype behind him personally. Either way, though, I think it is a good draft for a very good team here. Moving on, we have the New Orleans Saints, who in the first round take Garrett Wilson out of Ohio State. He's been pretty good this year. I still prefer Chris Olave, but Garrett Wilson is pretty great. So 13 overall, Garrett Wilson, just a solid pickup. You need that kind of, other than Michael Thomas, you need that route runner with the explosiveness. I don't think Michael Thomas probably won't quite have that quite explosiveness that maybe he had at Ohio State once. But Garrett Wilson does certainly have that, and so I think that's a good pair up for a team that really needs some receiver help. In the second round, picking up Desmond Ridder out of Cincinnati, who's been really good for Cincy this year. The Saints, they just extended Taysom Hill. There's no guarantee that they bring back Jameis Winston, and if they don't, they're going to need an actual quarterback, because I'm sorry, Taysom Hill's not a quarterback. And Desmond Ridder, I think even a second-round pick could step in and kind of play day one. He's an experienced guy. His main issues really, coming into the season was accuracy, and I think he's still shown that at times where his accuracy does have a few issues, but I think pairing him up here in the Saints, they can really teach him. They can build an offense that fits him. I think would be a good pairing. In the third round, picking up Derek Deese Jr., the diesel truck out of San Diego State is quite a monster after the catch. And so I think, once again, it just helps that offense build the pieces and make it what they want it to be. Right back-to-back picks. Next, they take Travis Jones out of UConn, who is a guy that's a bit more potential-based. He does have some solid traits to him. I think it's more of, a future-based pick for the defensive line. I just kind of saw an opportunity there. I think he fits nicely with the Saints defense. And then in the fourth round, picking up Alec Pierce out of Cincinnati, Ritter's teammate. They need some receiving help. You get three receivers here in the first four rounds. You're going to have much, much better time for Desmond Ridder or Taysom Hill, whoever it is starting. And so Alex Pierce, Desmond Ritter's college teammate, obviously. They've been good together for years now, so I think it makes sense. Next up, we have the New York Giants, and they have back-to-back picks here in the first round. Maybe not a very popular pick. I'm sorry. I love me some Kenny Pickett, and I just don't think Daniel Jones is the future. I understand that he's had to deal with a lot of injuries on the offense. The offensive line's not been very good, but I think at this point it might be a Sam Darnold situation to where, even after that, when they finally got him to Carolina, where he had weapons, and the offensive line still sucks over there, but even when he had weapons, he just wasn't able to do that much with them because he's a little bit beyond saving at this point. I think Daniel Jones is a similar case. And so I think he's not the future. And Kenny Pickett, on the other hand, I think he fits really nicely for a number of reasons. He's a guy that can push the ball downfield. He's a great athlete, actually. He's maybe the most athletic quarterback in this class. So, when you're dealing with such a poor offensive line, it's not as big of an issue, obviously. And really the big issue for a lot of people with Kenny Pickett is that he has small hands. That he's got 8 inches hands and stuff. And I understand, right? To some degree, that is going to be an effect on how well a quarterback can throw a football. But I really don't think it's going to be as big a deal as people are making, especially when you look at the way that he's played this year. And the fact that some people, some analysts just say he's completely undraftable because he has somewhat small hands. To me, that's a little ridiculous. I can understand having him in the second round, but to me, undraftable is a little ridiculous. And I'm really high on him. I think he'll be a good quarterback in the NFL. He's my quarterback number 1, and I have the Giants taking him here at pick 6. And maybe a case where people once again think why are they reaching on a quarterback? But I think Kenny Pickett's going to work out much better than Daniel Jones. Then with their other pick, getting Ikem Ekwonu out of NC State. Ikem, he is great. He can play any position on the offensive line, insane power, and yet so athletic. That helps out a very poor Giants offensive line. So I love that pickup there. In the second round, picking up Devontae Wyatt. Really getting in the trenches here. You're putting someone next to Leonard Williams, Dexter Lawrence, so that's great. Jack Sanborn, you got to get some sort of like linebacker that is just a smart player. Because if you think of like Blake Martinez, right? He gets so much production because he allows catches. That's why he gets so many tackles. Jack Sanborn gets a good amount of tackles, except they're not because he just lets the catches happen. Yeah, he suffers from, his athletic ability. He's just not an athletic player, unfortunately, but he's a really smart guy and does have some nice play in him. So I think it's a good pick here. Upgrading the offensive line again with Kyler Schott out of Iowa, who's a pretty solid guard playing next to Linderbaum. Maybe not ever going to be like a Pro Bowl guard or anything, but can be a solid guy to pick up and great to place next to Ikem Ekwonu and really helping that offensive line out. And then in the fourth round, getting a pretty big steal. I mean, edge rushers, they just kind of fell for some reason, but Trey Williams is a really good edge rusher. Him and Azeez Ojulari, Dexter Lawrence, Leonard Williams, that is an elite front seven, with now Jack Sanborn, Blake Martinez. That's a really good front seven for the Giants. So I think all in all, this turns into a pretty good draft for New York. And then the other New York team, we have the Jets, who also have 2 pages, but they only have 7 picks, not 9. With their first pick from Seattle, they take Kyle Hamilton, who I've raved about this guy a lot. He's just so good. And the fact that Notre Dame's defense is so much worse without him really shows how much an impact of a safety can have if he's just that good. Kyle Hamilton has the potential to legitimately be the greatest safety of all time, and I said the same thing about Kyle Pitts, a tight end last year, where they're just that good. And I think they're worth that kind of a pick, regardless of position, if they're just going to be that good. Hamilton, 6'4", 220 pounds, moves incredibly well, elite in coverage. The dude's just insane. And so I think it's a great pickup for the Jets here to get your Marcus May replacement and your Jamal Adams replacement. But he's going to be much better than Jamal Adams, trust me. And then the next pick, taking Chris Olave out of Ohio State. They could really use a weapon for Zach Wilson. Like, they could really use it. Michael Williams is great and everything, but he's a running back. Corey Davis has been underwhelming. They just have no one else. And so Chris Olave, my top receiver of the class, I think is a great pickup here. I think he fits in the Jets offense really well and gives Zach Wilson a weapon. In the second round, picking up David Ojabo out of Michigan. I don't think it's the best scheme fit in the world, but David Ojabo is a really good pass rusher and can certainly play 4-3 as well. I think he can play kind of that stand-up 4-3 guy, and I think he could play pretty well in it, Robert Saleh knows how to use pass rushers, and David Ojabo, he could be an elite pass rusher one day, and instead of just being that strict like 4-3 hand in the ground type defense, David Ojabo could bring some nice versatility to that. And then with their other second round pick from the Panthers, picking up Owen Popo out of Auburn, very good athletic linebacker. Dropped a little bit for me just because he's not been amazing this year compared to some other linebackers, but he is still a very good, athletic linebacker for a team that could use some linebacking help. So getting some defensive help early on. And continue with defensive help in the third round, picking up Jermaine Waller out of Virginia Tech, who, I think he should be on a lot more people's draft boards. He is a very good corner that probably not going to be selected too highly, but, he could turn into a solid guy one day. And then 2 fourth-round picks here. First one, Cole Turner. They could really use a tight end because all they really have is Chris Herndon. And Cole Turner is a very good tight end out of Nevada. He can block very well, great after the catch, nice physicality, all around just a solid guy. So I really like him. And then with their last pick in the mock draft, picking up Daniel Falele out of Minnesota, I think he's pretty much shown his ceiling at this point, which is a little unfortunate because you know what you're getting, and you're not getting anything spectacular. But at the very least, he's going to be a journeyman backup tackle because he's good enough to do that. But I think he can be a solid starter when you need him to. Is George Fant really in a long-term option? Who knows? So I think it's a solid pickup. And all in all, I think the Jets do a pretty good job addressing the defense as well as getting some offensive help for Zach Wilson. Moving on, we have the Philadelphia Eagles, who have 3 picks in the first round. And with the first one, they take Derek Stingley Jr. out of LSU. Still the best corner in the class to me. He just didn't get to play this year. He's going to blow up the combine. He's an incredibly athletic player. He's easily the best player out of LSU we've seen. Or best defensive player out of LSU we've seen since Patrick Peterson. So Derek Stingley, very good corner, great pickup. That's a scary, scary, scary duo with him and Darius Slay. And then with the 9th pick, picking up DeMarvin Leal out of Texas A&M, who is also going to be a great player on this defense. He's probably going to play more of that defensive end role for them, but can certainly switch into the interior when needed. Just a very good defensive lineman that brings some great pressure. They've got a lot of pass rushers on contract years. And then with pick number 14, getting a receiver in Drake London. I know it's not very popular. I think Eagles fans are mainly just tired of seeing receivers being drafted to them. You still need receiver help, especially when Devontae Smith is literally your only wide receiver. I said a while ago that I don't think Devontae Smith is good enough to be the number one by himself. And I think that remains true because he's been great. Don't get me wrong. Devontae Smith has been great, but it's really tough when Jalen Hurts cannot target literally anybody else. Jalen Reagor, if there was a way to have a negative PFF grade, Jalen Reagor would have it. Drake London is a great, big-bodied, go-up-and-get-it guy that can go deep, and I think he's kind of the opposite of Devontae Smith, where he's not necessarily that elite route runner, that big playmaker in terms of after the catch, but he can certainly go up and get it. Just a big-bodied guy. I like him. He's my second receiver, so I have the Eagles taking him. Then in the second round, taking Daxton Hill out of Michigan. They need some safety help. Anthony Harris is only on a 1-year deal. They could just use safety help in general. Daxton Hill, a very solid athletic guy. In the third round, picking up Drake Thomas out of NC State. They could use a linebacker, and Drake Thomas, I think, is one of the more underrated guys in the class. Another guy that could really rise up people's draft boards, by the time of draft day. Solid in pass coverage, but the dude's an amazing blitzing linebacker. So I think if Nick Sirianni, knows how to use him, and I know, it's more of the defensive coordinator's job anyways, but because he calls offense mainly. Drake Thomas, great blitzing linebacker, so I think he'd be a great pickup here. And then in the fourth round, picking up Jakari Robinson out of Wake Forest, who he's pretty good. Another one of those guys where he should be picked higher than he will be drafted, and maybe he will go higher. Maybe he's going to be one of those guys where people are like, what? Why is this guy being so drafted so highly? He's a reach. No, Jakari Robinson, he's really just that good. Falls for me because, again, there's just some other receivers I like more, but he is a very good receiver, and that makes a really nice trio with him, Drake London, and Devontae Smith. Next, we have the Pittsburgh Steelers, who in the first round take a quarterback, as Ben Roethlisberger recently announced that this will be his last year in the NFL. Dwayne Haskins is not the quarterback going forward, and it's not the best quarterback market in the world because I don't see the Steelers trading for a quarterback, and there's not really any good ones in the free agency market. So I have them taking Carson Strong, who's really shown out this year, and I think Mac Jones is kind of proving that narrative that you can still have a pro-style quarterback in today's game. And the Steelers are a team that would know how to use that pro-style quarterback, because that's mainly the thing, is the team has to be able to know how to use him, such as the Patriots. I think the Steelers would know how to use him. Carson Strong, he's not the most athletic guy in the world, but he can make plays when he needs to. He's got a pretty good arm, one of the best of the class, honestly. Very accurate guy. So Carson Strong is a really good quarterback, my number 3. In the second round, picking up Jaquan McMillan out of ECU. Maybe a guy that returns, to be honest. He's not getting a lot of draft buzz, surprisingly. I think he should be a lot higher on people's, he should be on people's radars in general. I just don't hear him talked about much at all. But he's actually a really good corner. So I have the Steelers taking him. They really need some corner help. Brandon Smith out of Penn State. Really solid linebacker. Their linebacking core looks pretty horrendous right now. Devin Bush just not playing well. Joe Schobert just not fitting well. So they could use some linebacking help. And then in the fourth round, taking Devin Tompkins out of Utah State, who Really small guy, but he's also been pretty great this year. And so that's, really the thing is that, like, the Steelers, you need some wide receiver help. You don't address it through the first 3 rounds. And even with the size of Devin Tompkins, like, he's played really good. So maybe that's where a bit of wariness comes around, because he's not quite Devontae Smith, but the Steelers could use a guy of his caliber. Then we have the 49ers, don't have a first round pick, so in the second round, they get some receiving help for Deebo Samuel, and hopefully Brandon Ayuk can still eventually break out, but they take Eric Ezukanma out of Texas Tech, who's a very good receiver, really just brings a bit of everything and is just more than solid at some things, does bring some nice speed, great route running, love his hands. In the third round, getting some corner help because Jason Verrett just still cannot stay healthy, and they have no depth pretty much. They've had that one really good rookie that has been pleasantly surprising. I forget his name, though. But Jalen Amore Davis, though, is a very solid corner out of Alabama. I think he's kind of emerged. Will obviously emerge over Josh Joe, but he's been pretty solid. So I have the Niners taking him. And then in the fourth round, getting Kyron Williams. They have a lot of running backs on contract years. Kyron Williams, a guy that I think there's a narrative that he's really only a receiving back, and that's why I was not a fan of him at first. But then when I realized that he actually can run and he can do it pretty well, I riz on him in a bit, and so he's a pretty good running back for a team that's going to need a running back. The Seattle Seahawks, they don't have a first-round pick either, and so they take Trent McDuffie with their second-round pick, who, we talked about Kyler Gordon earlier, who might be a bit better. Trent McDuffie, he's still really good. Trent McDuffie, a bit more of a zone corner, but either way, this team needs some corner help bad. The local stays in Washington. Trent McDuffie is a very solid corner. In the third round, picking up Zachary Carter out of Florida, who is never going to be an elite edge in the NFL, but he's a guy that is like pretty much one of those surefire things to where he's at the very least going to be a good contributor. Again, not going to be elite, but he is a solid pickup. And then 2 fourth-round picks. The first, Jackson Kirkland out of Washington, who's someone that I've fallen on pretty massively. He's just not performed this year. Still a very versatile, solid guy that's played great in the past, but he's just not lived up to standards. I think he's more of a guard right now in the NFL, but can play tackle. The team still needs some offensive line help, even if Russell Wilson's likely gone. I don't have them drafting a quarterback here just because, I think Geno Smith, one of the better backups. Who knows if they trade, for somebody, if they do trade Russell Wilson away, if they even do trade Russell Wilson, so we'll see. And then there are the fourth-round pick getting Jerome Ford out of Cincinnati, who ran over Houston yesterday. The dude is really, really good. He should be on more people's radars. Running backs just kind of fell in this draft. That was the 3 positions that fell was running back, tight end, and edge. And they get a really good running back here with Jerome Ford. Tampa Bay Buccaneers, first round take Kobe Bryant. They could use some cornerback help. Richard Sherman's just not been all that. He's been hurt. They've had a lot of injuries on cornerback. They really didn't even have that elite cornerback to begin with. Kobe Bryant has that potential to be an elite cornerback. He's not quite sauce, but he is a very good number 2, and I think he has that potential to be an elite number 1 in the NFL. With their second round pick taking Quentin Lake out of UCLA, who I'm a big fan of. I think he would be really great to pair up next to Antoine Winfield, who's really showed out, so that'd be a great pairing. In the third round, getting Max Mitchell to replace Donovan Smith. Max Mitchell, very good tackle out of Louisiana. Really like him and his upside. He's going to be a pretty good tackle in the NFL. And if you haven't noticed, this is a very good draft class. And then in the fourth round, getting Rachaad White out of ASU, who's also been really good this year. Again, running backs just fell. He's definitely worth the top 100 pick. Just kind of how the draft board fell. But all in all, the Buccaneers fill some good needs here, and they get some great players for the future. And then we have the Tennessee Titans, second to last team. The first round, they go Chad Muma, linebacker out of Wyoming, who's been pretty good. He's risen to my linebacker number 3 position. I think he's a first rounder. Titans, they got pretty much every single linebacker, inside linebacker on the team on a contract year. It'd be important to get someone there in the first round that's pretty good. Don't have a second round pick. That went to the Falcons. Third round pick, they pick up Trey McBride out of CSU. Really, really good tight end. He's a really good tight end. I have a couple people that know him personally. He's a really good guy apparently, and just a solid talent that's really performed well for CSU. I think he's going to be a great tight end in the NFL, and the Titans need a tight end. And then they have 2 fourth-round picks, one being Corey Durden out of NC State, who's played pretty good here more at the end of the year. Started out, he wasn't playing actually at the start of the year. He was like the third on the roster, and luckily started playing a bit better. Definitely more of a developmental guy, but has a pretty high ceiling. And then Henry Litwin out of Slippery Rock. Definitely a guy that most of you haven't heard of. I think he could be a pretty solid receiver in the NFL. Definitely could be, like in the number 3 to A.J. Brown and Julio. And I think he's a worthy pick of it. So Henry Litwin, pretty solid guy. And I think this is a pretty good draft for the Titans. And then last but not least, we have the Washington football team who pick up Malik Willis at the number 19 pick. And now listen, I think Sam Howell is better than Malik Willis. Honestly, I've been cooling on Willis. Like, the main reason he went here is because he is a really good fit. And he's the type of quarterback they need. They don't need a Sam Howell. They don't need a Desmond Ridder. And so that's really the only reason he went here. I don't think Willis is going to be a great quarterback in the NFL. I think he could have a similar career to, like, say, a Teddy Bridgewater, maybe a bit better, maybe a bit worse. To me, he's just not an NFL caliber quarterback that's going to ever win you even playoff games, in my opinion. He's got a really high ceiling. Like, don't get that wrong, but he also has a pretty low floor, and I think he hits more on that low floor aspect of things. Again, Washington, he's a much better fit, and that's why he still does go here at number 19. I wouldn't personally be taking him at 19, though. I do love the rest of these picks, though. Colin Wilder, I just skipped Andrew Voorhees. Wow, and that's sad because if you haven't heard of Andrew Voorhees, which maybe some of you haven't, very, very, very good. This is like one of my draft crushes. Like not a lot of people like this person, but dang, do I love him. Like, Andrew Voorhees is a bit of a. He's just great. I don't know what else to say. I mean, yeah, I can't hit on a specific trait because it's like everything I look at, I adore. And, the main reason he's not a first rounder for me is I don't think he's on the same level as, like, some of the other guys of, like, a Tyler Linderbaum, a Zion Johnson at interior. But he is going to be a really good replacement for Brandon Scherff. Then moving on to Colin Wilder out of Wisconsin, he's really, really showed out at the end of the season. I think getting an actual safety and not like a safety at linebacker pretty much would be important for Washington, to upgrade that defense. Hopefully that pass rush bounces back next year. But Colin Wilder, a solid pickup. And then Riley Moss out of Iowa, who's also really showed out this year, mainly at the end of the year. They could use some corner depth. They've got some solid guys. William Jackson's not been super impressive, sadly. Kendall Fuller has been good at times, but they could use some depth, and Riley Moss is some great depth. But that is going to do it for this 4-round mock draft. I've been working on this for quite a bit now, so hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Don't forget to leave your thoughts down below. I want to hear what you think about your team's draft class. Make sure to share the video, like it, subscribe if you like the content. I got other stuff coming out soon. Tomorrow I've got a Super Bowl 56 halftime show concept coming out. Just a fun little thing I decided to do. So if you want to check that out, like I said, like and subscribe. Hit the notification bell so you never miss an upload. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see all you guys in the next video. Bye-bye.